Now, I have several prior videos on this, and I do not want to become the guy who talks about vivisection on YouTube. However, in 2016, I may be the guy who talks about vivisection on YouTube. I mean, other vegans just do not tackle this or do not deal with it in a sincere way that admits of the complex gray areas and overlapping kind of moral jurisdictions this gets you into. It's easy for us as vegans to say people should stop eating meat because they can eat tofu. But if you do the research, it is not so easy to say we should stop doing original scientific research because we have tofu. Tofu cannot render these experiments obsolete.
À-bas-le-ciel.
Just, create a fairly popular vegan YouTube channel and then sit back and wait for someone awesome to contact you. It's pretty easy, as à-bas-le-ciel recommended in one of his millions of videos.
À-bas-le-ciel.
I would post it here, but I don't know which one. There's too many videos. Just too many.
Hey, what's up, guys? One of the first things I've said on this channel, because I think it's a really useful challenge to the political and organizational conceits that many vegans have, was that if you want to tackle vivisection, you have to cooperate with people who disagree with you. You have to be able to cooperate with people who are insiders in the system, including people who actually conduct scientific research themselves. They're the people who know what you need to know. They're the crucial partners you've got to have on board if you're going to make a difference in the real world. And I got a letter, I got fan mail in effect, from a guy who is an insider, who is conducting biological research, including some experiments that exploit animals. Now, in my prior videos, I alluded to the crucial role that moderate people can have in these debates. And by moderates, I meant scientists who do torture animals to death, but who are interested in minimizing that torture. So those would be people who are not vegan, but who share with vegans the concern that some of the animal research is unnecessary, i.e. that the whole experiment is unnecessary, or that the particular suffering caused by the design of the experiment is unnecessary. People who see the moral value in trying to minimize the evils of vivisection, pardon me, but people who are not abolitionists or who are not calling immediately for an end to all such scientific research. Hello, Isel, he writes. I've thought about mailing you for a while and never got around to it, but your recent video, Vivisection, the Next 10 Years, made me think of a couple points I'd like to share with you. I'm a recent graduate working in comparative immunology and about to start a PhD in global health at a major UK university. I've been vegan for just over a year and was vegetarian before that. A few years ago, I went on a 4-day training program on murine/mouse experimentation, and it was about this time I went vegetarian, period. So again, I ask the question, this is rare, this is extraordinary, but in a sense, we should wonder why. Why is it rare? Why is it extraordinary? I'm tempted here to add some autobiographical reflections, but I mean, if anything on earth is going to make you pause and reflect philosophically on the contradictions within our culture of animal exploitation, it might indeed be an experience just such as this one. I was already thinking about that stuff when I was a high school student. The guy doing the training was vastly experienced in animal research, having worked on everything from rats to pigs to dogs, and spent the 4 days delivering material on anesthesia, minor surgery, euthanasia, animal behavior, etc. Although he had not trained formally as a biologist, i.e. started out as a young animal technician and worked his way up, I was amazed at how much he knew about animals. On the first day, he gave an introductory talk that touched on perspectives regarding animal research, and to my surprise, he actually touched on the hypocrisy of meat eaters who are against animals killed for research. Who are against animal research. I've attached the graphic he used in his presentation, which shows the magnitude of animals killed for food versus animals killed by cats and animals killed for research. This really made me think deeply about my carnivorous diet, and shortly after I came home, I went vegetarian. Although it was a little while before I went vegan, I'm still grateful to this guy for making me realize, whether he meant to or not, that I could no longer justify my decision to eat meat. I think in the UK, whether they realize it or not, most of the public accept that the use of animals in experiments is more valuable than their role in agriculture. That's probably why the majority of the public here support animal research. However, there are still large areas of ignorance. A recent survey done in England showed that only around half of the 4,000 participants knew that animal testing for cosmetics is illegal here in Britain and the EU, and that importing animal-tested cosmetics into the UK is against the law. Clearly, testing cosmetics on rabbits is very different from testing vaccines on rodents, so there is much work to be done in helping the public make the distinction between animal testing and animal research. Pause. Now, for practical purposes, for this discussion, for my viewers, for the type of people who are intelligent enough to keep watching this channel and not just get offended and storm out of the room, what he's just said is not controversial. But it's worth pausing to consider that to many vegans this is controversial. There are many people who would insist on the contrary, that no, testing a vaccine is identical to testing lipstick, to testing cosmetics. There are vegans who refuse to make this distinction. And in many ways, that's just a debate we're all avoiding having. But, if your moral position is that no research, neither cancer nor vaccine nor anything else, there is no form of research that can justify torturing an animal to death, neither a rat nor a monkey, that is a position I respect. And I think in a university debating room, in a philosophy department, I think that's a debate worth having. Meanwhile, down at Parliament Hill, we got to deal with this. We have a real life set of murky contradictions and questions of what is the real difference we can make now and in the next 10 years. We got to roll up our sleeves and cooperate with people like this. This guy is incredibly rare. This guy is a vegan or a would-be vegan or a semi-vegan. This guy wants to be vegan, who's working in a laboratory currently torturing shellfish to death. This guy is 1 in a million right now. This is exactly the person you need on your team. If you have a vegan charity, a vegan organization, a vegan lobbying group, illegal, sitting down with a lawyer trying to put together a set of proposals for real reforms. This is the kind of perspective you really need to hear, even if you disagree with it, even if it's wrong, even if it's evil. Okay? I've said this too many times lately. I don't want to be right. I want to win. If you are going to play to win, this is the dude you need on your team. There are vegans who will be offended that I'm not just taking the simplistic abolitionist position of saying, well, all of this research has to stop, and has to stop tomorrow because I say so. It's humbling to recognize that you live in a democratic society where you're in the minority, even if you think you're ethically right, even if you think your minority is correct. Having a truly democratic, publicly accountable process pertaining to animal exploitation research, I have no doubt that many projects would be approved. But that would create a stark divide. Okay, are you going to torture a monkey to death to allegedly find the cure for cancer? And is that claim credible? And a public scrutiny process to really look at whether or not this research is legit and matters? That's one thing. But you would immediately see the disappearance of torturing a monkey to death just for psychological research, which we have had a lot of in the Western world. Again, I mentioned that in the earlier video. I had a link to an example. But like the psychological experiments, like you're just torturing animals to death to see how miserable they are afterwards. Really, that is not an exaggeration. You can look into examples that will give you nightmares, including the pit of despair experiments. Yes, we do have a bad history in the Western world of torturing animals to death, including monkeys and primates, for no outcome that could be justified in this type of situation. If you have someone working inside the given industry, in this case, inside the animal experimentation biology research industry, what they're familiar with is likely to be the opposite. Maybe personally you're involved with one of those terrible experiments, but if not, you may only know about mediocre experiments. You may have a sense of what's average, of what's normal in the industry, but you may be blinded to the extremes. And in legislation, we need to be cognizant of both. With violence, we need legislation that addresses extreme violence, extreme human behavior of all kinds, no matter how improbable. And we also need to have social systems that are aware of what's normal, what's average, what's common, and not to treat them all in the same category. For the time being, for many experiments, vertebrate or invertebrate animals are all we've got. pause. So I just mentioned in my earlier video, I said that in a pithy way, where I said, look, it's easy for us as vegans to say people should stop eating meat because they can eat tofu. But if you do the research, it is not so easy to say we should stop doing original scientific research because we have tofu. Tofu cannot render these experiments obsolete. So again, for the time being, in 2016, with vegans being a despised minority, with no power, with no pull in the public, I'm not looking at eliminating this, absolutely, because I don't think I can within the next 10 years. I'm looking at ways to make the process transparent, publicly accountable, to deepen democracy in reference to vivisection, and hope that will limit it and start a sort of long-term cyclical change that eventually may be able to eliminate vivisection, or at least make it very marginal, very rare, very exceptional, eliminate 99.9% of it. If you are taking the time out of your day to worry about this, to me, you're a real vegan activist, and you give me hope that in the next 10 years, we really can make a difference. We can do more than just sitting in front of our video cameras and complaining.